Alright folks, I hope you guys will take what I have to say in this video very seriously. You might think that the title of the video is a bit ridiculous or over exaggeration, but I just want to tell you guys the truth 100% as it is. And I truly believe that America and the collective West is headed for doomsday destruction. Okay, let me start with something crazy, something you definitely haven't thought about. I'm going to talk about the COVID vaccine. I want to make something clear, okay? I'm not an anti-vaxxer. You want to get your shot? Sure, go ahead. Personally, know some people in Canada that has already had their eighth COVID boosters. So I did mention before that right after I got vaccinated, I was given one shot of Moderna and one shot of Pfizer, okay? Right after I got vaccinated, I became extremely allergic to animals. You can't make this up. So I'm at the point where I can't even own a pet for the future now. It's only getting worse and worse. If I had to, I would have to be taking, for example, a Reactin every single day. Okay, I understand that some allergies, they come with age, but what do you think are the chances? And by the way, I wasn't given an option. I work at a Chinese grocery store, but it's actually owned by Loblaws, and Loblaws is the largest grocery store chain in Canada. This was a national policy. Every single employee was given a 45 days notice. Unless you get vaccinated, you will be fired from your job. And yes, some people were fired because of this. And I was also given notice from my university that if I did not get 2 shots of the COVID vaccine, I would not be allowed to return to campus. Just telling you as it is. So, out of all the NATO countries, what percentage of the population do you think are fully vaccinated with either Pfizer or a Moderna vaccine? Probably maybe 80%. In Canada, it's much higher. I think in Canada, it's roughly 90%. And in the United States, it's probably much lower, between 70 to 75% of the adult population. Now, here's the shocking plot twist, okay? So let's say a World War III starts tomorrow, okay? What are you worried about, in terms of your enemy nations? Are you worried about, the LGBTQ plus community? Are you worried about the queers and the non-binaries and the transgenders? Are you worried about the women, the children? Are you worried about the seniors that's living in retirement homes? No, you're worried about strong, military-aged, muscular men. And guess what? None of the citizens in China, all of its 1.4 billion citizens, yes, the vast majority of them are vaccinated, but China has their own vaccine, which is completely different versus the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. The Pfizer-Moderna vaccine, basically, let me sum it up very simply. It causes a protein spike. By the way, the Chinese vaccine, for example, the Sinopharm, that's something completely different. Also, in Russia, all of its 145 million citizens, none of them has had the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. Russia also had their own Sputnik vaccine for COVID, which is completely different. It does not cause a protein spike. I'll give you another example, okay? Many of you guys saw the attack that's launched by Iran on Israel. This is a disaster. We could be looking at the beginning of the end. And guess what? Iran has, close to 90 million people? None of the Iranian citizens has received the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines. They got their vaccines from China, from Sinopharm. And remember, the United States also had this policy not very long ago. So all of the healthcare workers in the United States, all the doctors, all the nurses, the first responders, and also people in the military, they were all forced to take the COVID vaccine. There was a mandate on the federal level. And anybody that did not comply were discharged from military, or they were fired from their jobs at their hospitals. Almost every single military personnel, almost every single doctor, almost every single nurse, almost every single first responder in all NATO countries, Canada, United States, Australia, all throughout Western Europe, into the Baltic states, almost every single one of them has had either the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine. So why do I want to bring up this point? Well, it's very simple. What if China, Russia, Iran, or Saudi Arabia, what if they had a secret kryptonite for this vaccine that causes the protein spike? For example, they could use it as a bioweapon, like what the soldiers did during World War I when they were releasing a mustard gas into the enemy's trenches. Now, if the Chinese and the Russian and the Iranian soldiers, if they were exposed to this bioweapon, nothing would happen to them because they had a different type of vaccine. But what if there was a type of bioweapon, a type of a special gas that can be released into our atmosphere that will cause a dramatic chain reaction on top of the protein spike, causing people to go into cardiac arrest and even death. What do you think will happen then? Can't you see how dark this is? The United States, you're supposed to be the world military police, right? You have become a laughing stock of the world. Just look at all these top US military generals. Look at how many queers and transgenders and non-binaries and whatever the hell you want to call them are there. These are the top US military generals. Right now, if World War III broke out, if the Chinese troops, let's say if they landed on the coast of Washington in California, they don't even have to fight. All you have to do is say the wrong pronoun, and the American soldiers will completely use their mind. They'll say, "Oh, how dare you misgender me?" And boom, next thing you know, they're shot in the back of the head. America has completely gone to shit. I'm not trying to make a propaganda. Do you know why America has arrived at this point? I mentioned this in previous videos before, but everybody in China knows this. Joe Biden, along with Hunter Biden, along with the entire senior management level at the White House, was compromised by the Chinese Communist Party a long time ago. Okay, how do I know this? Back on December 4th of 2013, Joe Biden and his son Hunter aborted Air Force Two, and they landed in Beijing, China. They went on a nationwide tour with Chinese President Xi Jinping. This is back then when Joe Biden was the vice president. How do I know so much about the details of this trip? Well, I was in China at the time. And it's very important to mention that the then Vice President Joe Biden visited the hometown of my grandfather in the Sichuan province of Chengdu. And it was during this trip, top government officials from the Chinese Communist Party, they invited Hunter Biden for a meeting inside of Air Force Two. They hopped in on a flight together. When the flight ended just a couple hours later, Hunter Biden exited Air Force Two with a $2 billion equity fund. Now, this equity fund is supposed to support Hunter Biden's law firm, but we all know that's 100% BS. And do you know where the $2 billion goes? Okay, it was written in codes, but it's very, very simple. There's a bunch of letters on there. Basically, every single person in Joe Biden's inner circle was compromised. 20% of the money goes to Hunter Biden directly. 20% of the money goes to Rob Walker. 20% of the money goes to James Gilliar. Also, 10% of the money goes to Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother. And finally, on the last line of this contract for this $2 billion equity fund, it was written in code as 10 held by H for the big guy. How do you decode this? It's very simple. 10% of the $2 billion equity fund to be held in Hunter Biden's bank account for the big guy, Vice President Joe Biden. He was compromised a long time ago. Why do you think China wants Joe Biden to win so bad back in November in 2020? And if you're living in America or any of these Western nations, you should be very, very concerned because dark days are coming.